This is Service Trucks USA podcast. This is your host, Ken Johnson, KJ they call me, and we are doing podcast numero uno for the year 2024. And we're talking to Gil Bugatti with Gil's Heavy Equipment. And I had to tell you guys something. We're going to do it. We're going to do it for real this time. We're finally going to launch the podcast the way it was intended to do. If you're listening to this, then your boy no longer works for Summit Truck Equipment. He is now on his own. That's right, baby. He's on his own. Service Trucks USA is now reality. Now, when I decided to do this podcast, I've always had a vision in my mind of who I wanted to be my first technician. So I refer to this gentleman as the OG, the original gangster. He's the guy that I probably, without a doubt, have the most respect for as a professional, as an individual, as a man of character. His name is Gil Bugatti, and he owns Gil's Heavy Equipment, located on Bingle Road in Houston, Texas. Now, what makes Gil so different is that he possesses all of the key attributes that I think are inherent in running a successful small business. Every single thing that I think that this industry can offer, Gil represents. He's the walking, talking example of it. So what better way to introduce you to the Service Truck USA family other than getting you to meet my man, Gil? So without further ado, I'm going to bring my man, Mr. Gil Bugatti, online. Gil, how the heck are you today, my brother?
Kenny, it's good. I'm glad we're here. We're finally doing this. This is great. Great.
It's so weird, man. How long have we been talking about doing this?
Years
and years and
All right,
years.
I don't want to put you up, but years.
So, first of all, I want you to understand that Gil is special to me in a number of ways. Number one, he's been one of my best clients working for Summit. But the big thing that I love about Gil is he's fair, he's conscientious, he's kind, and he's thoughtful and considerate. And it's a family-run business. And I think that's critical for any small business. But when I had this vision for Service Trucks USA, all I could think of is, I wonder if Gil would use something like this. Could he benefit from it? And over the years, I've come to learn, and you're going to find out through this podcast that, yeah, we've done some business and it's been good. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about the man, Mr. Gil Bugatti. Mr. Gil, how long have you been in business?
It is going on 41 years in our Gil's Heavy Equipment business.
41 years, dude. That's more than a lot of these guys that are listening to have been alive.
Yes.
So tell me about the very beginning. So did you start off turning wrenches in diapers? I mean, talk to me about your background and how you got started.
Just shy of the diapers, actually, Kenny. I always had the mechanical aptitude. I always enjoyed everything related to mechanics, and it necessarily did not mean a engine or a diesel or a piece of heavy equipment, just mechanical, to the point of a lawnmower. I'd be the guy that on Saturdays would pull out lawnmowers out of garbage and take them apart in my dad's garage. I loved it, and I was able to continue. I went ahead and went to a vocational school. I was really a poor student in school, but vocational school, I was like obviously the best in those classes, and I found out what I really was going to do in my life.
So tell me this, did you do extracurricular activities? Did you do sports and band or any of those type of activities in school?
It was nonstop mechanicking, and if it wasn't mechanicking, it was either running cars or running motorcycles. That's it.
Now, did all of your friends do the same thing, or were you like an outlier? Were you unique, or did you have some buddies that kind of like to do the same things?
We had the buddies that would be also involved with the same mechanical and the car racing and the motorcycle racing.
Now, what about family? Did your father, brothers, did any of you guys turn wrenches together?
Absolutely not. No, nobody in the family. My dad was a little bit of everything. He could do everything, but leaned on me when it came to mechanicking.
Really? So from the time you were 11, 12 years old, you were already learning how to tear things apart and put things back together again?
Yes, without any type of guidance. Just basically look at it and see how it works and see if I could fix it, or see if we're going to put it back in the garbage on Saturday.
So tell me this, when you got started, when you were, this is in the 70s, I'm assuming, right? Is that about when this was all happening?
Yes, yes, mid 70s, yes.
So how do you learn? I mean, where do you get the tools? How do you learn when you're a kid in the 70s? Because we know what they have today, but back then, how did you go about doing what you need to do?
Well, I tell you what, I think, with a little bit of a parent support, my folks seen what I like to do. So I think I started off with a couple little mini bikes, and you start working on those, riding them, and you break them, you have to fix them. And I was always taught, you break it, you fix it. And that's what we did. And he supported me with the, tools as I grew. And after I really, really started enjoying it and find out that after I took it apart, I can make it run again. Then I went out and started buying my own tools.
So tell me this, when you got started, you're graduating from high school. What are you thinking about as you're graduating from high school? You get your diploma. What's going through your mind at that time?
Work, work. I always worked through the whole course of my high school. I always believed in generating my own income. And I like to get rewarded when I did something, I got paid for it. So I really worked a lot. But I knew once I completed with my schooling and I went to my very first job, which was directly into a heavy equipment company in Ohio, I knew this was a trade that I was going to do and I was going to stay with it. And really, truly, I never had any idea of being my own heavy equipment company, owning my own business. I just was going to basically work for a company and do the best I can and grow with the company. I was
So
able to do that.
are you 18 at this point? Are you straight out of high school?
Straight out of high school.
So the
Right.
vocational school, how long was that?
That was a 2-year schooling. And when I wasn't actually in school, after school, weekends, I'd work at the company that I was going to go full time with.
Were you sponsored on this training or this educational program, or are you doing it on your own dime?
No, there was a percentage of money that you had to pay for the schooling. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now you complete your, is that considered an apprenticeship? Is that what you would consider that, or just OJT training?
Apprenticeship.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're done. You go to work for that company. Tell me about your first experience in a shop working for a company and actually having to fix other people's stuff. How was that?
It was really the most fulfilling thing that I ever did. This company never really built Detroit diesels. And talking with all your old school guys out there, you'll know what I'm talking about. The 453s, the 671s, the old Detroit engines. And I was asked about rebuilding these engines. And I said, yes, sir, I can. This is what I do. This is what I learned. And I feel I'm fairly good at it. And I became, within the first year, their engine rebuild employee. And that's what I did for a long time in that company. And then we moved into several different parts of it. But this is the big, heavy equipment, the Caterpillar, the John Deere's, and it was large mining equipment. So it was very interesting to me.
Were you ever intimidated? I mean, you got to see this stuff as a kid and you're looking at these things that are bigger than you. Were you intimidated at all?
Fascinated, fascinated, never intimidated.
So nothing scared you. You looked at it and go, I'll figure it out.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So now you're working there a couple of years. You're the go-to guy. You're the engine rebuild guy. I'm assuming after talking to you guys over the years is that particular discipline requires meticulous attention to detail. Am I correct on that?
Absolutely. I mean, that's why they've never really did it. They didn't have a tech that was going to raise their hand to do it. And when you build any type of component like that, um, specifications and doing everything by specification is critical in order for these engines to last. Even if it's a transmission, hydraulic system, uh, following directions, being able to read, comprehend, and apply yourself. But we did it, and we were successful with it, and it seemed to do well.
So here's one of the things that I'm curious about is you mentioned that you were not very good in school, but yet you're thriving in an environment where you have to read and do independent study because no one else knows how to do what you're doing. So you have to follow the book. What do you think made the difference in your mind or your capability to make you suddenly able to do in this environment what you weren't willing to do in school?
Man, that's a really good, interesting, good question, though. And it's all about being able to read the things that you want to read and you enjoy reading. Make me read history books. Despised it. Make me read a engine repair manual. Took it home at night. Loved it. Loved it.
Couldn't get enough.
Get me micrometers and get me any kind of math equations for specifications. Loved it. Hated math in school. It's really and truly, you have to get to that point of what gets you going, what motivates you, and that the challenge of repairing and accomplishing the repair.
So the reason I'm going to ask you this next question is because I think it's important to understand what your mindset was back when you were a kid. And specifically what I want to ask you about is, dude, you're 18, 19, girls have to be somewhat in the equation. Where does that fit into this whole early Gil Bugatti? Where do women fit into this? And I'll explain why later, but tell me, what were you thinking in your late teens and early 20s about girls? Weren't you concerned about getting dirty?
Well, absolutely. But see, Gil Bugatti was able to own his own motorcycle and his own car because Gil Bugatti worked a lot and he made money.
And that is also attractive.
And the other boys, they were sitting home with mommy. So yes, we did have our weekends, and it was a lot of fun being able to do the things you wanted to do when you wanted to do them.
So there's an interesting dynamic here for the young folks that might be listening to this podcast, is that women are attracted to success, and success is reflected by your cash flow, your ability to buy stuff and go places. And
you got to take them out.
And they sometimes will overlook a little grease under the nails, right?
Always dirty guy. Yeah.
All right. So we're going to fast forward a little bit. So now how long are you working on for that first company? How long are you there?
Very short period in a sense. I worked there in Cleveland, Ohio for about 2.5 years and moved rapidly with the company. Had an opportunity to come to Houston, Texas. And it was I want to call it the overseas business of heavy equipment, shipping equipment out and purchasing and importing equipment to Houston through the Gulf.
So let me understand this. So what you're doing is you're working for a company out of Ohio. They have a pretty robust import-export business. They're shipping heavy equipment globally, and your job is to both prepare that equipment for shipment overseas. At the same time, you're buying stuff from other countries, and your job is to perhaps put it back together again, assess it so that it can be remarketed. Is that kind of what you were doing?
It was, but they painted a little picture a little nicer than I seen it. But so we loaded up. We first built a 40-foot container, a semi-container, and that was a shop. We built a physical shop inside the container. All the tooling, toolboxes, drill presses, workbenches, welders, anything you could think about, we built it in the shop. Myself and a truck driver brought it to Houston, Texas. Some of the old guys out there who were raised in Houston, my company purchased, no, I shouldn't say my company, the company purchased, it's called the Circle 8 Rodeo. And it was a rodeo ground. Still had bulls out there, still had all the rodeo arena out there. And we pulled up, and I had a confused look at my face, and he says, "Hey, Gil, this is your new shop, your new heavy equipment company." It's like, wow. You would walk through the stadium, and by the time you got through the stadium, you couldn't even see yourself. The dust was so bad. It was a shocker.
How old are you, Gil?
I'm at 22 years old.
So let me paint a picture. You got long hair?
I'm a long haired guy. Yes, sir.
Skinny?
I was skinny and I was fit. Yes.
And you're by yourself?
I was the only mechanic that was transported down there.
Dang, dude. And you just popped up and just left Ohio to move all the way to Texas.
You asked earlier about, the was I ever challenged for sure, but that was a like what am I doing here? What am I doing here?
Were
But
you lonely or what? Like what's going on? What's going on in your mind at that point?
I had to do everything, Kenny. I mean, we didn't even have a place to sleep. I mean, we were sleeping out of motels. It was incredible. But it was a very strong company that I was working for, and my job was to get this stadium disassembled, start working on equipment that was coming in, and start establishing a operation out of I think it was Aldine Bender out by where the Circuit Rodeo
Aren't you
was.
still a kid at this
Well,
point?
I tell you what, it was a rush grow up. It really was. But
And they gave you this responsibility. Why didn't they send somebody with more experience? I mean, why would they send a young guy like you out there to do that?
dude, I think the challenge, man, the challenge. I just love it. I love the challenge. And
Okay. So now you're out here. You're out here in Texas. You're working for a company out of Ohio. Are you immediately successful? Are you?
Oh no.
How'd that go?
No. It was tough. I mean, we were trying to hire people to come in to assist me. There was multiple things that were happening. Again, we had to build a place to try to even start working on the equipment. We had to get the bulls all off the yards out there so they wouldn't mosey up to you when you're working. But this company was bringing the equipment in fast, and I was able to hire. Of course, I told some of my buddies in Ohio, and I hired one of my buddies, Russ Trapay. He came in. He's a technician. Then I hired his brother. He's a painter. Who else did we hire? Then I hired a couple local guys, but it was interesting, as a mechanic, and then all of a sudden forced to be a shop supervisor. It was a lot. There was a lot of long hours. It was tough.
Weren't there any local companies that could have done that work, or what? Where were all the local guys?
It's strange that they never even reached out. They said basically we're doing it. We're
Wow.
doing it.
Okay, so for the people that are listening right now, I want to paint a picture of the times that were going on right then. So I'm assuming this is what, about 1978?
So yeah, I started my business in '82. So I worked with Udelson probably. Sure, I worked with Udelson for 5 years.
So this is the late 70s.
Yeah.
Okay, so Vietnam has ended. Okay, we're coming up on Jimmy Carter as president.
Jimmy Carter.
Interest rates are through the freaking roof. Everything America made is falling apart. Supposedly, the United States was in. Would you say it was kind of a doom and gloom?
It was a little bit of a depression.
A
Yeah.
little bit of a depression,
Yeah.
right? And so the thing that I find interesting is that we just forget our history. We forget how many things we've overcome, right? Because I'm from the same generation, and things weren't all hunky dory. It was hard.
Tough. It was
It
tough.
was tough.
Yeah.
Remember, we had gas lines. Remember those days?
Yep.
Rationing, odd and even days. It was crazy. And I think those days, that's when they were telling us that Japan was going to take over the world, right? It was just everything was bad. Okay, so now you're working. How long are you now doing this gig for the Ohio company? How long are you there?
Oh, I was at least 4 years. 4 years, probably.
Did you guys finally build a shop, something more permanent? Or?
So there was a shop built, and then they built a nice large office facility.
Okay.
And I mean, it's a little bit tough. A lot of the there's the owner's sons and stuff went to college to be salespeople, and they finally got out of their colleges and they came down and they opened up their offices down there. But that's exactly what took place. It business was kind of strange, and it got to be, it was very busy, and then it got very slow.
Right. Because
Uh,
we went through another recession, a pretty big one.
we did.
Yeah, right before Reagan became president. So now you mentioned that you started your first gig on your own 1982-ish, right? Give or
Right.
take. Now, what the heck was going through your brain at that point that makes you think that you have what it takes to operate your own business? How did that happen?
I did a little hop. I did a little hop from the company that I was with, and I went to a crane company here in Houston, and I went, and right there when all the layoffs. So I probably worked there for about 8 months, 9 months maybe, and I was a service truck driver. I was on the top shelf. I did real good there, made good money, and the layoffs came, and I figured, man, I would never. They won't lay us off. We're the good mechanics, right? They took the highest paid, and they started dumping the highest paid.
No
and,
way.
And I was like in shock. I really was. Like, there's no way I could get laid off.
So tell me this. At this point, are you married yet? What's going on?
Not married yet.
Okay.
No.
But you got financial commitments and it comes as a surprise. Was it a shock? Is it terrifying? What are you feeling at the point when they give you this pink slip?
It wasn't of any type of financial shock. I'm pretty frugal with my money, but I was more irritated that they laid me off.
Of all people. Yeah. How dare you?
To be honest, all
I
right.
get you. I get you 100%.
And but I'm glad because and it's a shame. Then you see senior techs that were there a long time, and they got laid off.
Okay.
It was a panic. I mean,
Okay.
I didn't have nothing to panic about because I was pretty. It was
But-
easy.
But
right?
these guys got families
Yes.
and house payments and car
and
payments.
it was terrible. It was
Yeah.
terrible to see them go through that.
Yeah.
So I at that point I said, well, I established a lot of relationships, friends, people through the company I worked for from Ohio.
Okay.
And you work there, you get to meet a lot of people.
And are these guys back in Ohio still?
No,
Or they here?
these are now Houston.
They're in Houston. Okay.
They're Houston. A lot of people in the vendors and all the parts companies I dealt with, and then the clients. Some of the clients were local clients that bought locally. So I got to meet a lot of people, and started calling, told them I got laid off, this and that, and they said, "Man, you need to do this on your own. We could use you." I said, "No, I really had no intentions, none. I just wanted to give me another job, give me my responsibilities, do it, go to the house." Right? Started thinking about it, and actually at that point, I was with Nikki, which is my wife now. We were together, and
No, wait. So you met her while you were unemployed?
I met her in the apartment building I lived in.
Okay.
She lived downstairs. I lived upstairs.
Okay.
So, talking to her about it, this and that, and I said, you know what? I'm going to give it a shot. So I bought a van. I bought a big box van in the apartment, had a blown engine in it, put it in the back of the apartment, rebuilt the engine. And I said, you know what? I'm going to put this together, and I'm going to start working for myself. So I put all my tools in this van, put it all together, and there was a guy in the apartment that kept on watching me, always visiting me, this and that. He worked for United Airlines and always yakking with me, this and that. And I said, well, this is my goal. This is what I think I'm going to do. And he says, so then I realized he worked for United Airlines. And a lot of the guys from Intercontinental would go to his apartment because, as I learned in the airline business, most employees live in other states. They work at a
hub. Okay.
They fly home on the weekends.
Right.
He said, man, we could use a mechanic like you. I said, what what are you getting at? He says, no, United Airlines, they could use a mechanic. I said, don't they have mechanics? He says, no, they fly them in every, 2-3 months. We power all the equipment down in the corner. We let it pile up, and then they fly their mechanics in to fix it. I says, yeah, I could never get into the airline, though. How could I ever get in there? I know a few people. And the guy, he was being truthful. He knew a few people. And he set me up for an interview. I bought a ton of insurance, and I got into United Airlines.
So let me understand this correctly. So you're fixing, you got your own little startup, you got a box fan, got
Setting
your
up my
shingle,
tools,
and
yeah.
he sees you, and then he invites you over. And
I
says,
believe I worked on his Volkswagen.
Okay.
I believe I worked on his car. Yeah.
And he was happy.
He was happy.
And then he says, hey, you should come work for the airlines. And you go, there's no way I'm ever
Yeah,
going to
how am I
get
going to do
cleared.
this? Yeah.
So at this point, do they have airframe certification? Do you have to have any certifications yet?
So what I'm doing, though, is ground support equipment.
Ah, okay.
Everything you look out that window while you're being impatient, walking around, that's what I worked on.
The
Every
conveyors,
tug,
all that stuff.
belt loaders,
Yeah.
baggage carts, everything that moves on that ground, that was going to be my job.
Okay. So now you come in as an employee or an independent contractor?
Contractor.
Okay. So you're an independent contractor. And they say, well, we like you, but you got to have a lot of insurance.
Have a lot of insurance.
So then you go out and find an insurance broker. Did you know anything about insurance at that time?
Nothing.
So you find out, how many guys did you have to talk to before you figured out the insurance?
That part was scary. That was tough, and it was a lot of money to come up with, but it was a lot of opportunity.
Okay.
And I said, we're going to do it. We're going to do it.
Now, you have a bookkeeper at this point? How are you
I
keeping
do
track?
not have a bookkeeper.
You have no clue.
I do not. No, it's just really winging it.
Okay, how about invoicing? Do you know how to invoice anybody?
Never
at that point?
invoiced anything. Never.
Lord have mercy.
But thankfully, my wife was a pretty smart and
Wait, you mentioned where's somewhere along there
my
you got married?
girlfriend
Okay.
was pretty smart, and she helped me out with this here. Right?
Okay, so you get started. So now you are a ground support contractor for the airline at Intercontinental Airport here in Houston, right?
Yes.
And tell me what happens next.
More work than you can ever imagine. Just when a company runs 7 days a week, all year long, they break machines. They break everything.
So obviously you can't do this all by yourself. Then what happens?
Swamped 7 days a week, never seen the girlfriend again. Here we go. Right? But
Okay.
I was making money.
Okay. Are you hiring anybody at this point?
At this point, something has to happen.
Okay.
Because I get next door to me by United, Piedmont Airlines approaches me.
Okay.
Hey, we want you to work on our equipment. Then US Air approaches me. Hey, Gil, we see what you're doing. Can you work on our equipment? I'm thrilled and I'm panicking.
Okay.
So that's where we got the buddies again. We got my two buddies of mine.
So at this point, you call your boys up and you tell them what?
I need help and I want to employ you. And I bought some old beat up trucks, put them together, and we are now Gil's Heavy Equipment.
Okay.
So GSE Support Equipment Repair. And they helped me out. We worked there out of 2 trucks, and we started expanding. I got big enough at the Intercontinental that I rented out the whole old post office.
Okay.
Made it a shop.
Okay. So I don't want to skip these details because I think it's really important to understand. How old are you at this point?
I might be working on 24 years old.
Okay, you're 24 years old, right?
Right.
You're now working for a bunch of airlines.
Yes.
You're taking care of all their ground support
Absolutely
equipment.
incredible.
You're working, Sam, there 7 days a week. You're killing it. Where do you get the Weblos to go out and rent a post office, a closed? How do you do that, dude?
Dude, it just, again, you don't have to go to business school. You don't have to have a business degree. Just look at the whole picture and see where you can go with it. I mean, it was there. It was all there. We had the work. We needed a facility. And the best place is to have the facility right there on the airline's grounds.
Okay, so who do you approach? You just knock on the door someday. Hey, how do I get this? What do you do? How do you physically get that facility?
I start doing work for Lufthansa Airlines.
Okay.
Lufthansa Airlines is right next to the post office. We start talking to the guys at the post office. They're going to move.
Okay.
They're going to move to their new post office. Gil says, "What are you doing with the old post office?" And that's how we started, man.
Okay. So you just sign a lease. Do you get a lawyer?
Did not even get a
You didn't get a
lawyer.
lawyer? Okay.
Did not even get a lawyer.
You just
Kenny,
you just seat of your pants, trust God. And next thing you know, you got this facility.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now what happens?
So we started that. I think as we're growing it, some of the clients started calling me in the heavy equipment business that I used to work at through the company when I first came down here. I said, "Well, yeah, I got a truck and I got a couple mechanics." And we started off with that. So we had the airline ground support
Okay.
and we started working on the heavy equipment.
Which I would consider the yellow iron.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
My construction equipment.
Okay.
That got pretty busy also.
And you're running it all
Yes, sir.
from that facility. Okay.
I met my technical support, Rick Grimes, and he was by my side the whole time. I hired him, and Rick Grimes is a very, very intelligent man, and he at that point says, "I love the ground support." He helped me take over the ground support business.
Okay. So he took that burden. It's still your company,
But
but
Rick
the day-to-day operations he's running.
He's doing all the technical stuff, the big mechanical part. He's running the airline ground support for me. And my new challenge is the heavy equipment, earth moving equipment.
Okay.
And that's where I wanted to focus with some of my other guys. And we started that business. I rented a little shop off of Aldine Bender.
Okay.
Outgrew that in about 9 months. And then we rented a larger shop, actually by the large cat dealer out here, Mustang Tractor. Mustang Tractor bought that shop.
Mm-hmm.
And we were up to, I think it was almost 12 mechanics at the airline ground support. We had 5 guys in the Gills heavy equipment side. And it was just rock and roll. It was just going and going and going.
Okay.
But trying to keep up, trying to put the trucks together, trying to keep. It was a lot to learn in a very short period of time.
So now we're in the mid 80s. We're in the blow and go 80s at this point.
The official Gills Heavy Equipment real startup, DBA, was in 1982.
Okay.
1982.
Yeah. So I want to make sure we don't overlook your personal life. So at what point are you lucky enough to convince Miss Nikki to become your significant other? When did this happen?
I'm going to blame this on the business. All right.
The business. Okay. Okay.
It took about 5 years of me running around trying to make sure that I could make this work. And then we finally got married.
Was she patient?
Absolutely.
Okay.
She was with me the whole time, man. We go back to when we finally moved, we rented a house and we would be doing invoicing on Saturdays and Sundays in the evenings. She was my clerical, she was my financial. All I did was work and she took care of the rest.
Yeah, I think that those of you guys, that this is a common denominator, those of you that are blessed with a supportive partner, supportive spouse, are blessed beyond compare. Because obviously I deal with Nikki on a regular basis now. She's still here.
She's still here.
She's still here doing stuff. And she's got to be a wonderful blessing. But I didn't want to overlook her on this story. Journey.
No, she was the whole backbone there on the sports side. My forte was mechanicking, and she.
Okay, so here's the deal. Obviously, you and I have been friends for a while, so I know a little bit more than most people know. But I want to now talk about the transition to let everybody know that not everything was,
Yeah.
roses and smelly happy, right? So let's transition to what happens next. The business is blowing and going.
Blowing and going.
You got two different segments going on simultaneously. You got somebody competent running the ground equipment for the airline industry. You got the reputation. You're the man. You're doing it.
We're going.
And then you're blowing up this construction equipment side. Then what happens?
We just think life is good, right?
Just when we're thinking life is good.
Then the terrible thing comes in as 9/11.
9/11. So for those of you that are young and don't know, 9/11, the year was 2001, and some crazy jihadists decided to drop some airplanes onto two great big giant towers, which were the World Trade Center in New York City. And for all practical purposes, it brought the United States of America down to a screeching halt. How did that affect you, Gil?
So when this screeching halt comes to place, of course, aircrafts, large jets hit the Trade Center. And the big thing was, how did this ever happen? How did these terrorists ever get into an airline? How did they ever get on the aircraft? And it shut the airline industry down, shut it down until answers came out. And they've got the laws and the requirements to get on to
work on, to get near an aircraft
was incredible.
Just completely overnight.
They wanted to triple the amount of insurances, the liabilities. It was very, very difficult. And when this happened, airlines were faltering. And of course, the airlines I work with, they filed Chapter 11. United Airlines was one of the ones that got in the deepest part of this here, 9/11. So it was a bad time. They filed, TWA filed, Northwest filed. They were all clients of mine.
All with a bunch of money that they owed you.
They owed me a lot of money. So that was a tough time. So all that fun is over. Thousands and thousands of dollars of income that was lost. And we had to make sure that we could even move forward doing this.
Translated, you're trying to figure out whether you could survive, whether you could stay open.
And I left the little thing out, which was a very big thing. I got to know a lot of people at United Airlines, and they convinced me to open up an operation of all the places in the world in Des Moines, Iowa.
Okay.
So we had this airline industry for 16 years. Des Moines, Iowa, one of the major managers of United moved to Des Moines and says, Gil, we need somebody. And this guy, he knew everybody there. And we did the same thing. It was a mirror of what we had going on here. I opened up with 6 major airlines in Des Moines, Iowa. Hired people from Des Moines.
Pre 9/11 or after?
Pre.
Okay.
All right. So this is all pre. So we had service trucks. We had 7 mechanics up there. And Rick Grimes is flying every month back and forth with United Airlines, making sure his people were working, doing what they're supposed to be doing. So we had these 2 big operations going. 9/11 kicks in. And we really had to look at each other and figure out what we're going to do. It was a bad time. So a lot of quick thinking. And we were able to sell our Des Moines operation to a very large, it was like a Stewart and Stevenson.
Mm-hmm.
And they had all the clout. They had all the insurance.
They had the financial backing.
We sold everything, trucks, people, every nut and bolt. We got on the plane. We flew back to Houston, Texas.
Okay.
We were done. I was able to, at this point, listening to my accountant, which I now had, and she says, no, don't just stop. I continued, I think, about 4 different airlines, and we continued after 9/11. We did a slow regain to get our money back, but I put all our focus into the heavy equipment.
Okay.
But it drained me. It drained me.
When you say drain you, emotionally, financially, physically, what's going on?
I let it hit me for a good month emotionally,
Okay.
and then the financially had to be figured out.
So is it just wiping out your savings and reserves? What's it doing? Are you borrowing money? What's happening
Never
at
had
that
to
time?
borrow, but it took every bit of savings out.
Okay.
It did.
And you're not pulling a lot of personal money. You're not buying a bunch of toys and fancy vehicles this whole time. You're not.
Every penny I had, Kenny, went back into that company.
Okay.
Everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I hear stories before you and I met. One of your big admirers, who we know is Brent, and he was bragging about you. And he always talks about the big three, the original three of you guys that came down from Ohio. So I wanted to segue a little bit about that because you guys kind of established the whole independent, non-dealer heavy equipment repair operation. You guys were ahead of the curve.
Yeah, there wasn't too many.
There were some individuals,
yeah,
but there weren't anybody that had your mindset that operated with, meticulous shop and had technicians all uniformed correctly. And you always had a reputation, all long before I met you, of running this really tight shop. This really high end shop. So tell me about the big three, because I want to give you guys your credit for what you guys did to kind of change that whole mindset of the independent shop owner, for heavy equipment.
Well, I met a gentleman who was from Michigan, Randy Smith.
Okay, I heard
Randy
about Randy.
Smith, yeah, Texas Heavy Equipment, and got to know Randy as a technician. He was independent by himself, and we worked closely together. We worked together, and he was on one side of town, and I was on this side of town. And he seen what I was doing, and Randy put together a company, Texas Heavy Equipment. Did well at it. Shop, service trucks, and it was a really nice relationship. We never, ever got in each other's business. We pick up a phone. We help each other out. He had his clients. I had my clients. And it was a really, really incredible relationship. Buddy of mine, Russ's Field Service, who was one of the gentlemen who came in from Ohio, he opened up his own business, and he stayed independent, which I envy at times. He was that guy that he was a top tech, and he had plenty of clients. And when Russ says, I'm not going to go to work, Russ didn't go to work. And I envy, but he's done well for himself. Russ stayed with me for, probably 8 years. And then he went into his own construction heavy equipment business also. Stayed here in Magnolia. I was in Houston, so he had his Magnolia customers. And so both those guys are gone. They actually both moved to Wimberley.
Okay.
Retired, and Randy sold his business, and Russ retired about 2 years ago.
Yeah, so you guys did something, because obviously I've been selling all over the U.S. for the last 10 years, so I've seen a lot of you guys, and there just aren't that many independent shops that I call them, they're almost military grade. Just everything is neat and in its place and clean, and you were able to establish standards. That's what I'll call it. You had standards, and I'm just fascinated, and I just think that so many of these younger guys would benefit by your experience, your knowledge, and that's one of the goals for this Service Trucks USA. What we're trying to do is, before you retire and go out to pasture, I need to get some of that knowledge transferred from them gray hairs over to this next generation, because I think you have so much to teach, these guys, about life. So we now are at the point where we got Gills heavy equipment, the current version. Okay. So talk to me a little bit about this facility and what sets you apart? So now we're talking current, modern, we talked about the past. What sets Gill? What are your standards? What do you stand for at Gill's Heavy Equipment?
I think the first thing was, you know, being able to purchase our own shop, my own shop, no more leasing. I was able to buy this and have it built in 2000. And we built it the way a heavy equipment shop should be built, the flow of it, the way everything is set up. But it's just almost like everything that you wish you had, I wish I had when I was a tech. You put the cranes in, you put the jib cranes in, you put a full size wash rack in, things we never had. But I wanted to get those things for my guys.
Okay.
Um, you know, loop systems, you put everything in, make it efficient, make the whole place efficient. Um, that was the start of really saying we have our own company, our own business. We had our name for a long time, but now it got real. You had real payments, a real facility, and it's rewarding. It was very rewarding.
How do you staff it? Like, what are the differentiators between you and another independent shop? Like, when you're recruiting an employee, how are you involved in the day-to-day hiring of your people? Is that important to you, or do you delegate that? How do you go about bringing in staff to, deliver a quality product to your customer?
Okay, that's critical to me. I'll never rely on anybody else to hire my employees. I have to talk to them. I have to meet with them. I want to learn who they are. I use several different, ways to bring in people. I don't solicit anymore. I hire companies for all that. But once we get past all the they call it the filtering of the employees, and we finally get somebody to sit here and interview with, I'm in those interviews. I
Okay.
want to talk to these guys.
I'm going to assume that you've made mistakes.
We've made some mistakes.
Talk to me about the mistakes. What are some of the things you've learned over the years that this audience, these members of our community would benefit from? And be brutally honest. What are some of the biggest things that you have done wrong when it comes to personnel?
Well, on the personnel side, I mean, man, I don't really want to say the wrong things. You really have to listen to what a, a, a new employee is telling you what they can do, and they have to prove themselves here at the shop to really say, are you really who you said you were on paper or not? And I think my weakness, and I'm going to even say for my supervisors, is we'll we'll continue to try to keep that employee. No matter we see the negatives, we see the problems, but we're gonna try to do everything we can to keep this guy on and figure out, can we help him? Can we make the changes? Um, is there another side of this tech that we hired that we didn't see? And sometimes we make the mistake and we keep them on too long, and they cost us some bad money.
Have you had any successes? Have you
I've had
stuck?
a lot of incredible successes.
Okay.
I've had two. I had going on my third guy who's retired from my company. They worked for me for 26 years, 23 years. So I feel once we finally get that employee hired, my guys stay with me.
Okay.
There's a lot of loyalty. That word loyalty is gone in this industry, but my guys have been incredibly loyal. I've taken care of them, and they have always taken care of me. I mean, that's how we grow with our employees.
Okay. So I think that that's super critical. Now, I'm going to touch on this one just really quick, is that every generation thinks that they had it harder than the younger generation that's coming along. Okay. Oh, those guys, they didn't know what we went through. And every generation goes through that. They look back and they think that the new kid isn't as hardworking. You're actually hiring these folks. And I know there's a lot of comment about Generation X and millennials and Ys and Zs and all these different generations. What is your honest opinion of what we can expect from the current workforce? Is it based upon individual people, not that you can't just lump everybody into a broad brush or, category, or is it based upon, yeah, there are some generational differences that we have to account for. What would you say about the current generation of young people coming into this industry specifically? What are your observations?
So the guys that have the opportunity to go to some of the tech schools, and there's some really good tech schools out there. Today's mechanics, we're going to call them technicians, and they're being taught a lot, which they have to be taught this about the electronics, the emissions. Everything is computerized, ECMs, every piece of the machine. Their transmissions are electronic now. Everything, braking systems, steering systems. There's a lot of electronics. There's a lot of emissions. There's a lot of, it's high tech.
Okay.
And they're teaching them that. What has happened is they're skipping over in this field, like the big three and the new guys, the Bretts and the new ones out there. We still are faced with hard work. This heavy equipment industry, construction equipment, is hard, laborious work.
So just for the audience that may not be familiar with what we're talking about, you're talking hard work because temperature variances. We're talking 110 degrees down to minus 20 degrees, right? We're talking physically hard because you're lifting heavy pieces of equipment and you're manipulating equipment in very awkward positions, right? Is that defined hard?
And it's difficult. It's laborious. It's a lot of labor. It will wear a man out. It will.
Could you say that some of that could be mitigated by companies doing a little bit more to make sure that their technicians are equipped with the proper tools and equipment?
Absolutely, and I believe in that, and that's what I've done. And a lot of my new competition is following those steps. Buy what these guys need, make the investment, buy the correct shop tools, buy the correct service trucks, But what I'm getting at is the young generation. Yes, they have technical knowledge, but they don't know. They skipped over
the hard work part.
Yes. And they're in shock when it's time to do hard work.
So let me ask you this. Is that a redeemable quality, or is that just something you just got to go out and pray that you find some ranch boys or some farm boys? Like, how do you overcome that?
If you could get those ranch boys who went to school, that's
the
winner.
Epitome. Yeah, that's the winner.
Yeah.
But it's just hard. And so the quality that is lacking right now, that is hardest to teach, is just the stick-to-itiveness, that work, that ability to overcome physical obstacles, right?
Yes, be the best troubleshooter you can be. Be the best guy that you could take out your laptop and do all the diagnostics and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But once you got that all figured out, you still have to get those wrenches out and do the work.
Gotcha.
You have to do both.
Okay. All right. Well, for all of you guys out there, you want to know what makes Service Trucks USA different? It's right here. This is the nitty gritty. This is the stuff that's going to set you apart from your peers, because you're not going to hear this kind of interview on any other podcast, I can assure you, because we're about to cover something else that's near and dear. So me, KJ, and Gil met because Gil had a reputation for running trucks a long time. He had good looking trucks, but they were old. And he paid cash for them, and he's quite proud of it. And he didn't like having debt. Then along comes this whippersnapper named KJ comes along and at the time I'm representing Summit Truck Equipment, and we changed the paradigm. So what we want to talk about next on Service Trucks USA podcast, I want to talk a little bit about the transition, I can't remember. Oh, what is that silly lady name? Mariah Carey, and she came up with that new version of herself. But anyway, I can't even think of it right now. But bottom line is, Gil, how has your perception of service trucks changed over the last 10 years? Not necessarily because of me, but just in general.
Just in
How
general.
have you changed your thoughts pertaining specifically to acquiring service trucks, financing, paying cash, whatever? Talk to me a little bit about that whole service truck fiasco, because you are the OG, you command respect, you have the money to pay cash if you needed to, you can do whatever you want. So how has your thinking evolved over the years?
I never could ever accept what these large OEM companies paid for a service truck. I thought they were all crazy. We could never get there. We could never do it. And like Kenny said, we would buy a used truck. We'd find a used bed, and we'd spend hours. And we've actually built our own lube trucks. I mean, days and nights building our own service trucks. Now, when you get to the business side of it and you look at the amount of money and hours we spent doing that versus billable hours and billing out our clients and buying a truck. So I said, all right, we started weighing those things out. And Kenny came by with this beautiful truck that was all put together. And I'm thinking, there's no way I could ever do this. I wanted to run him off. And, but in order to keep good employees, back to the tools, give them good tools, right? So I went ahead and I purchased my first truck, and it was the one we sold today, a 2017 F550. Incredible truck, and enjoyed every bit of it. The mechanic enjoyed every bit of it. And we started at that point to continue to buy trucks and to continue. I'm doing the count. I think we're up to with the including the lube trucks. I think we have 12 service trucks from Kenny here. And I tell you what, it's probably the best investment I ever had. And guys, the guys who can't, look how far in my years did I finally say I'm going to buy a service truck. The guys who can't just buy it, they have great leasing options for you. Get that truck, get to work, generate the money, and you'll be rewarded. You won't be broke down in your own service truck on the side of the road trying to fix it.
Here's some of the things that Gil has taught me, because look, I sell trucks for a living, so obviously I have a bias. But as I've seen the prices increase, even I've been intimidated a little bit. So one of the things that Gil's helped me understand that I'm now going to share with you, again, this is inside stuff, Service Trucks USA, inside knowledge. Here's what Gil taught me. The trucks have to be paid for by the customers, okay? So here's what I learned. Your truck isn't paid for out of your hourly rate. Your truck is paid for by trip charges and mileage. And that has to cover the cost of the truck, insuring the truck, the fuel for the truck, the maintenance for the truck. Everything has to be covered by those trip charges. The only reason why a service truck isn't affordable is if the truck is sitting in the garage, it's not working. If you're just going to sit it in the shop and never put it out in the field, then you're not going to make any money. It's just a big giant boat anchor sitting there, costing you money. But Gil showed me, I was committed by several of my future podcast or people that are going to be on the podcast. Don't tell all of our secrets, keep some of the stuff confidential. So I can't tell you everything, but I will share this with you. It's math. It's not rocket science. It's not the hardest thing in the world, okay? You calculate how many miles you drive, where you're going. You create these concentric circles for your zones, your trip charges, so that you're getting your time and your money. Your truck's costing you money either by the mile or by the hour. Every single time it's someplace, it's got to get paid for. You take all those expenses, you divide it by the cost of the vehicle, and that's what you need to break even and hopefully make a small profit, 10, 15, 20% profit. And then it doesn't really matter how many trucks you have because every single truck will pay for yourself. Am I correct, Gil?
They have to work. They have to roll out this driveway every day. Exactly.
Correct. So those of you that are wondering how these trucks get paid for, that's how, okay? Get them out of your garage, put them in the hands of a good technician. Now, Gil does something radical that none of you guys, some of you guys aren't brave enough to do. Gil, do you let your technicians take their trucks home?
I do not.
Oh my God, how could you ever have anybody working for you if you don't let them take the truck home? How do you possibly pull that off, Gil? And what made you make that decision?
You know, do the math, fellas. Do the math. Look at that last Peterbilt that you just bought that cost you $265,000. And you're going to go ahead and take this here vehicle and use it, just like Kenny said, for this tool to generate you money. But now the tool is done generating you money, and you're going to allow the technician, he's going to work out of the Houston location here, but he's going to go ahead and drive out to Baytown. That's where he lives. And we're just going to run all those miles, and everybody got a good taste of the fuel increases. There was a panic. But all my OEMs and all my other boys out there letting those guys drive those trucks home, and they're sucking up that fuel. It's too expensive to let service trucks go home and wear them out. You have to have a facility. You have to have a secure facility. Pay your guys more money. Let them buy their own car. And keep the service trucks doing what they're supposed to do. Generate money for your company.
Now, it's going to be terrifying, and there's going to be guys that you're going to hire, and they're going to insist, and maybe you don't hire that guy, but mathematically,
pay him.
The reason Gil is my very first guest for this type of what we're going to be doing in the future is because he's the OG, y'all. He's the guy that knows. He's the guy that's been through all of this stuff. And yeah, he's lost a technician or two because the guy didn't get the chance to take it home. But guess what? He made tens of thousands of dollars by not letting a technician take it home.
And listen, and I ain't gonna do the words on this here interview here, but if any of my mechanics who drive those trucks say, Gil, I need my truck this weekend to do something, dude, take it. It's their truck. Their tools are in that truck. Absolutely. But they understand why wear out that truck prematurely as a transportation piece to go home.
Exactly. So in closing, because obviously Gil and I could talk for hours and hours and hours, and I'm trying to keep my podcast a little shorter, but we had a lot of ground to cover, and I needed to give you guys a compelling reason why you should subscribe to Service Trucks USA and be a part of it. In closing, we're going to talk about this new adventure that I've undertaken. What could compel me to quit Summit Truck Equipment, to resign after 10 years? I'm 64 years of age. I got to be freaking wacko and crazy. But here's what happened. I've talked to so many of you guys over the years, and I've heard these stories repeatedly of you guys cashing in your 401ks, taking out mortgages on your house, wives working full-time jobs while you're trying to survive and get this bootstrap and buying old pickup trucks. I mean, I've heard these stories now for 10 solid years, and I looked at myself in the mirror and I go, well, what's your excuse? Stop making excuses. You've been talking to Gil about this for years. Go do it. So I'm now going to just talk about one of the features of being a member and why you should want to be a part of this community. Number one, you heard a sample of it. I got some badass friends, dude. I got some people that you guys are going to love to listen to and learn from, okay? And I'm going to bring them on the show, and we're going to put stuff on the website so you can follow and learn. And that's all I'm about, is helping you guys be equipped to survive and thrive in this challenging world that we're living in. But there's also an opportunity to make money. So you guys do know that us salesmen, we do kind of like to make money. That's kind of how we're motivated. We're hardwired, and I'm as good as any of them. So here's what I did: is I realized that, you know what? What if I switched teams? What if instead of working for the house or the man, I started working on your team? Well, the only way I could do that is if I got a subscriber base so that I can handle the nut. Because taking care of you guys is expensive. You guys don't really understand how much is involved in bringing you the tools that we're going to be bringing you. So I figured if I could get you guys to spend what you spend on a beer occasionally and make that part of your subscription, then I could probably pull this off. So part of this whole business model is based upon you guys being active subscribers and members. But what's in it for you? Well, I'm going to let Gil describe the Gil and Kenny business model. And we just did a couple of deals specifically using the Service Trucks USA model. Situation was this: Gil takes exceptionally good care of his vehicles. And Gil knows he can sell his vehicle. He doesn't have to wholesale them to me and let me put a big old giant markup. Now, I've done a couple deals where we ran them through the company. But Gil goes, Kenny, this is such a nice vehicle. The market's so hot. I think I'm just going to sell this one myself, And I go, Gil, let me do it. And he goes, well, I need to get what I need to get. And I go, Gil, I can get it for you. I promise you, I'll get it done. Now, the trade-off was Gil knows that time is money, and he's going to make my job easy, and he's going to make sure that that truck is cleaned and dialed in. So we have a relationship based on mutual trust, okay? So Gil takes care of the truck. It's accurately represented, and he's got the details on the service records and history on the truck. And then he goes, okay, this is what I need for the truck. And here's how a typical Kenny Gil conversation goes. He goes, you think we can get that much for it? And I go, Gil, that's my job. I got to get you what you need. And he goes, well, are you okay making this? And I go, yeah, that's fine. I can do that. And then Gil goes, wow, that's a lot of money. Kenny, are you sure? You sure we're not asking too much? I go, Gil, that's my job. Let me do my job, right? So I take it. I do it marketing. Now, I've had to do this on the down low because I work for somebody else. I can't really do it the way I'm going to do it with Service Trucks USA. But I'm going to let Gil then describe the next process of how our last couple of transactions go. Gil, take over. Tell everybody how the Service Trucks USA model works in terms of you selling your vehicle and getting what you feel is good value.
Well, first of all, subscribe, because I tell you what, the value is there. I tell you what, I keep thinking through the years, I'm going to take a lot more responsibilities off my plate, but I don't know. It doesn't seem to happen. I do a lot through the course of the day. And do I have time to sell a service truck? Absolutely not. I do not. So I do that. We keep incredible maintenance on these trucks. I'm very picky about how the guys take care of their trucks. Quote, I keep the mileage down on these trucks so we don't send them back and forth to the house. But when it's time to sell it, I don't have to do a lot of work at all. We clean them up. We have all our maintenance records prepared, and I turn it over to Kenny. We talk about the market price, on a vehicle. We look at it, and we look at fair market price. We look at the accessories we have on the truck. Kenny knows that stuff. I don't know all that stuff, but Kenny knows what this used welder is going to cost, what this used compressor is going to cost. That's where I just say, this is what I have. I want a fair market price, and I give it to him to do. And I don't want to say on these last two deals, but I don't think we even took a week. You didn't even
We didn't take 24 hours.
The first one was a boom. But again, and for the client who purchased that truck, you're going to drive home in a beautiful service truck, which I could feel good about never getting a phone call. That's how we represent what we're doing. I don't ever want to do that to anybody. And Kenny makes sure I don't. He goes through everything on that service truck to make sure it's ready to sell. It's the biggest relief for me and he knows how to negotiate the best money out of the deal.
So the whole process goes like this, guys. We're taking the middleman out of the deals. On the service truck, this isn't a Service Trucks USA commercial, but you guys need to know that when you listen to the podcast, look, I'm just like Gil was when he first started, the equivalent of working out of a box van, okay? I'm just getting started. I think you're going to be impressed with the web platform we built, the community directory we built. I put a lot of thought, just like Gil talked about his shop that he built. Dude, I've been thinking about this for 10 years, and I think you're going to like it. Do we have some growing to do? Of course we do. But when you get an opportunity to join, please just join, okay? There's a free part of it. There's a silver platinum. Well, I think we named it Apprentice, Journeyman, and Master, okay? For a few of you, you're going to get to come in as founders. And those are the guys that have been with me from the beginning of talking the idea. And you're going to get a one-time opportunity to join and get a lifetime membership. And there's some other things we're going to talk about. But this is what Service Trucks USA is all about. I want to do this for the time I have left on this earth. I want to go out and meet you guys in the field. I want to record podcasts. I want to talk about guys that work in mining. I want to talk to guys that work in the timber industry. I want to talk to the guys that are working out in the West Texas oil fields and doing all kinds of underground and all kinds. You guys do so many cool things that I think would be compelling to our audience. And I want to tell you stories. And I'm so proud and thankful that my good friend Gil Bagatti at Gil's Heavy Equipment was kind enough to be my very, very first, shop owner, technician, because he is the core of this whole business model. This is it. I'm on your team. Let's not be confused, okay? Everything that Service Trucks USA is about you guys. We're going to get you the top vendors. We're going to screen them, and we're going to do things to protect your privacy. We're going to give you a garage that you can store your information in your vehicle, and you too can be as meticulous as Gil is in keeping accurate records. We're going to give you a repository, a place to keep those records, and when you're ready to sell your vehicle, you want to sell it yourself, you can sell it free on our platform. You want a little help? I got to help you sell platform, but I'll help you do the paperwork so you're not getting screwed. But if you want the full service, I got the full service operation. And for those of you that are looking for a particular truck, stop wasting your time. I'm going to have an entire staff of people that do nothing but scour the country looking for the best and the brightest. And when dealers want to try and sell you something, now they got to go through me. And guess what? I know all the secrets. I know all the dirty secrets. So they're not going to be able to get to you without showing you and being transparent. And it's going to be a win-win for everybody. So guys, thank you so much for joining me on our inaugural 2024 podcast. Your boy is now free. I'm 100% independent. Service Trucks USA is here. Lord willing, we're here to stay. I thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for listening in and tuning in today. But Gil, you want to tell our friends anything before we sign off today?
Guys, I'll tell you what, continue doing what you're doing. Don't be afraid to do it. And the beauty about it, you've got Kane to always call, buy, sell. He's here to support you. But, man, just go for the challenge. Don't be afraid. Just do it.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate you tuning in. Okay, I'm past my pity party. We're full balls to the wall. We're going to get this thing done. We're going to make it happen. So sign up, Service Trucks. Service, TRUX, is the membership directory. If you want to follow us on the podcast, it's Service Trucks USA. So Service Trucks is the membership directory. That's where you sign up and become a member. And Service Trucks USA is to keep abreast of the latest and greatest things that we're doing in social media. We're going to have TikTok. We're going to have Instagram. We're going to have Facebook. We're going to have it all, dude. It's going to be your one-stop shop for everything and anything pertaining to a field mechanic. Man, I love you guys. God bless you. Be safe. Love your family. And love the Lord, your God, with all your soul, strength, and mind. Take care. Peace out. Subscribe right now to Service Trucks USA on your favorite platform so you'll never miss an episode. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook at Service Trucks USA. That's Service TRUX USA, where you'll get even more great content, discussions, and resources related to vocational service trucks. I look forward to getting to know each of you better. Until then, keep your fingers dirty and your nose clean. This is your guy, your man, your dude, KJ, signing off.